and indeed our safety. Mr. Chairman, charities should not be abused as personal piggy banks. It is both against the law and extremely unfair to charities that play by the rules. A line of questioning that we have not yet addressed and we've been glaringly absent in tackling is that of the abuses of the Trump Foundation. Now, the President's Charitable Foundation agreed to dissolve in response to an ongoing investigation and lawsuit by the New York Attorney General. The New York Attorney General found what it called, quote, clear and repeated violations of state and federal law, including, quote, repeated and willful self-dealing by the Trump administration. Apologies, by the foundation. If I understand your opening statement correctly, in mid-2013, you arranged for a straw purchaser to bid $60,000 for a portrait of Mr. Trump painted by the artist William Quigley at a charity auction. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why would the President want to bid up the price of something that he was ultimately paying for?
It's all about ego.
How was it paid for?
I believe it was paid for by a check from the trust.
And abuse, and again, you know, this is not a partisan pursuit here. I think ultimately what we're demonstrating is patriotism. This is about what is right and just for the American people. Did the straw purchaser purchase the painting and then the foundation funds reimburse the straw purchaser? Can you explain the mechanics of that payment?
I'm not involved with the foundation.
Okay. Did the President know what was happening?
Oh, yes.
And how did you know he knew what was happening?
Because he tasked me to find the straw bidder to ensure that his painting, which was going last in the auction, would go for the highest amount of any of the paintings that have been put on the auction block for the day.
And what happened to the painting?
I believe it's in one of the clubs.
Okay. According to the New York Attorney General in March 2014, Mr. Trump again used the foundation to pay $10,000 for the winning bid on another portrait of Mr. Trump that ended up as decor in one of his golf courses in Miami. Mr. Cohen, are you familiar with that transaction?
Yes.
Are you aware of any other instances where the Trump Foundation was used to benefit the Trump family?
Yes.
Could you elaborate?
So there was a contract that I ended up creating on Mr. Trump's behalf for, it was a Ukrainian oligarch by the name of Viktor Pinchuk. And it was that Mr. Trump was asked to come and to participate in what was the Ukrainian-American Economic Forum. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to go, but I was able to negotiate 15 minutes by Skype where they would have a camera very much like, a television camera very much like that one, and they would translate Mr. Trump to the questioner, and then he would respond back. And I negotiated a fee of $150,000 for 15 minutes. I was directed by Mr. Trump to have the contract done in the name of the Donald J. Trump Foundation, as opposed to Donald J. Trump for services rendered.
Thank you. Any other abuses of the foundation that you'd like to share? Again, it is against the law, and again, extremely unfair to charities that are playing by the rules.
Not at this time, but if I think of one,
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then for the balance of my time, would you agree that someone could deny rental units to African Americans, lead the birther movement, refer to the diaspora as shithole countries, and refer to white supremacists as fine people, have a black friend, and still be racist?
Yes.
I agree.
Gentlelady's time is expired. You may answer the question.
I did, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have two unanimous consent. Since we're finishing up, before we get done, I want to go ahead and.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I just want
Yes, sir.
I wanted to get to Ms. Talib, and then I'll come to you. Okay, Ms. Talib. I mean, they've been waiting here all day. Ms. Talib.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, all of you, for centering this committee on our sole purpose is exposing the truth. And some of my colleagues can't handle the truth, and this is unfortunate because it's the center of what is protecting our country right now. The people at home are frustrated, Mr. Cohen, and they want criminal schemes to stop, especially those from the Oval Office. Mr. Cohen, I am upset and know that my residents feel the same way, that a man you worked for the past 10 years is using the most powerful position in the world to hurt our country solely for personal gain. We are upset that some of our colleagues here are so disconnected of what it means to have this President of the United States sending checks to cover bribe payments, not hush payments, bribe payments you made on his behalf. One in 2017 of March, and another August 2017 after he was sworn in as president. They are upset that while my colleagues are trying to discredit your testimony by some of your own unlawful acts and lies, that they are disconnected with the fact that you were the personal lawyer for this president of the United States, that this president chose you as his legal counsel. My stance has always been the same, Mr. Chairman, based on the facts, not on future reports that we're all waiting on. My residents back home don't need a collusion clause with a foreign government to know this president, individual one, has disregarded the law of the land, the United States Constitution, and that he has misused his pardon powers. In the sentencing memo, Mr. Cohen, filed by the federal prosecutors in New York in December of last year, they stated, quote, in particular, and as Cohen himself has now admitted with respect to both payments, he acted in coordination with and at the direction of individual one. Mr. Cohen, as you know, President Donald J. Trump brand comes first, not the American people. Based on what you know now, based on what we know now, is that individual one used his money, businesses, and platform to enrich himself, his brand, and then the process directed you, Mr. Cohen, to commit multiple felonies, and you covered it up, correct?
That's correct.
You called it protecting his brand, correct?
And him as well.
Mr. Cohen, with this, do you think the President of the United States is making decisions in the best interest of the American people?
No, I don't.
Especially those you said that he used horrible words about, like African Americans, Muslim Americans, and immigrants?
Yes.
Just to make a note, Mr. Chairman, just because someone has a person of color, a black person, working for them does not mean they aren't racist. And it is insensitive that some would even say it's the fact that someone would actually use a prop, a black woman, in this chamber, in this committee, is alone racist in itself. Donald Trump is setting a
Mr.
precedent.
Chairman, I ask that her words be taken down.
Donald Trump is setting a precedent. I reclaim my time.
Mr.
Donald
Chairman,
Trump is setting a precedent
Mr.
that
Chairman,
the highest office can be attained
Mr. Chairman, the
through
rules
illegal
are clear.
activity. Cover up and hold on to business assets to break campaign finance laws and constitutional clauses. What we have here, Mr. Chairman, is criminal conduct and the pursuit of the highest public office by Mr. Cohen and individual one. I hope that the gravity of this situation hits everyone in this body and in Congress and across this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the rest of my time.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that her words, when she's referring to an individual member of this body, be taken down and stricken from the record. I'm sure she didn't intend to do this, but if anyone knows my record as it relates, it should be you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I would like to.
Hold on.
I want the words read back.
No.
We want to know exactly what she
excuse
said
me.
about a colleague.
Excuse me. Would you like to rephrase that statement, Ms. Tlaib?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can actually read it from here. Just to make a note, Mr. Chairman, that just because someone has a person of color, a black person working for them, does not mean they are racist. And it is insensitive that someone would even say racist, say it is racist in itself, and to use a black woman as a prop to prove it otherwise. And I can submit this for the record. If a colleague is thinking that that's what I'm saying, I'm just saying that's what I believe to have happened. And if, as a person of color in this committee, that's how I felt at that moment, and I wanted to express that. But I am not calling the gentleman, Mr. Meadows, a racist for doing so. I'm saying that in itself, it is a racist act.
Well, I hope not, Mr. Chairman, because I need to be clear on this particular. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Meadows, wait a minute.
I've defended you with false accusations.
Mr. Meadows, I'm the chair.
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you. I will clear this up. Now, Ms. Tlaib, I want to make sure I understand. You were not intending to call Mr. Meadows a racist, is that right?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not call Mr. Meadows a racist. I am trying, as a person of color, Mr. Chairman, just to express myself and how I felt at that moment. And so, just for the record, that's what was my intention.
All right. All right. Mr. Meadows. Mr. Meadows.
Mr. Chairman, there's nothing more personal to me than my relationship. My nieces and nephews are people of color. Not many people know that. You know that, Mr. Chairman. And to indicate that I asked someone who is a personal friend of the Trump family, who has worked for him, who knows this particular individual, that she's coming in to be a prop, it's racist to suggest that I asked her to come in here for that reason. Mr. President, the President's own person, she's a family member. She loves this family. She came in because she felt like the President of the United States was getting falsely accused. And Mr. Chairman, you and I have a personal relationship that's not based on color. And to even go down this direction is wrong, Mr. Chairman.
First of all, I want to thank the gentleman for what you have stated. If there's anyone who is sensitive with regard to race, it's me. Son of former sharecroppers that were basically slaves. So I get it. I listened very carefully to Ms. Tlaib, and I think, and I don't want to, I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but I think she said that she was not calling you a racist. And I thought that we could clarify that. Because, Mr. Meadows, you know, and of all the people on this committee, I've said it and got in trouble for it, that you're one of my best friends. I know that shocks a lot of people.
And likewise, Mr. Chairman.
But you are. And I could see and feel your pain. I feel it. And so, and I don't think Ms. Tlaib intended to cause you that kind of pain and that kind of frustration. Did you have a statement, Ms. Tlaib? I'm going to yield to you. We can just straighten this up.
Mr. Chairman, and to my colleague, Mr. Meadows, that was not my intention, and I do apologize if that's what it sounded like, but I said someone in general. And as everybody knows in this chamber, I'm pretty direct, so if I wanted to say that, I would have, but that's not what I said. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to clarify. But again, I said someone. And again, I was not referring to you at all as a racist.
Well, I thank the gentlewoman for her comments. I thank the chairman for working to clarify this, and I appreciate the chairman's intervening.
Now, to the gentleman, first of all, thank you for allowing us to resolve that. The gentleman had asked a little bit earlier.
I will withdraw my request.
Oh, you don't want to do the unanimous consent?
I need the unanimous consent, but I think I need to officially withdraw my request that it be stricken from.
Go on, withdraw it. You did it?
I did.
All right, sounds good. Now, I will recognize you for your unanimous consent. I think you want to put in the record some documents.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent that we put forth in the record the Vanity Fair article, which indicates that Michael Cohen must be the most gifted consultant in America, outlining his insights into government, health care, and policy and real estate, suggesting that it's not a real company, but and just like he's not a lawyer.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent that the LA Times article of July 16, 2018 actually be put in the record, which outlines the $1.2 million payment and their misgivings thereafter.
Without objection, so ordered. Any other unanimous consent requests? Size.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to make the February 9th, 2019 Washington Post profile of Michael Cohen, titled Michael Cohen's Secret Agenda, part of the record. This story shows Cohen to be a selfish manipulator who is all about himself. It even has a false anecdote about how he once claimed to deliver his own son, his own baby.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to make the May 9th, 2018 Washington Post article, South Korean firm paid Michael Cohen $150,000 as it sought contract from U.S. government, as part of the record. The article reported Korea Aerospace Industries paid a shell company run by Cohen.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to make Michael Cohen's sentencing statement to the Southern District of New York part of the record. The statement establishes that Michael Cohen continues to falsely blame his crimes on blind loyalty to the President, but only Cohen is to blame for his many false statements to financial institutions and the IRS.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent to make the August 20th, 2018 CNN article, Fed Scrutinizing Michael Cohen's Former Accountant and Bank Loans, part of the record. Cohen's accountant was subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury and required a lawyer. In his sentencing memo, prosecutors said Cohen attempted to blame his tax evasion on his accountant.
Without objection, so ordered.
Two more, real quickly.
Sure.
Ask unanimous consent to make the February 26, 2019 order filed by the Appellate Division of the State of New York regarding disciplinary proceedings against Michael Cohen part of the record. This order, which proactively applies starting February 28th, establishes Cohen committed a serious crime and ceased being an attorney when he was convicted of lying to Congress.
Without objection, so ordered.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to make the July 26, 2018 Washington Post article, Michael Cohen secretly recorded Trump. Does that make him a bad lawyer? Part of the record. The article describes potential ethical violations of a lawyer, Cohen, recording his client, Trump, without the client's knowledge.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Norman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to make the January 18, 2019 Huffington Post article 11 tweets from the fake fan account, Stud, Michael Cohen paid to fawn over him, part of the record. The account is described as a place for women who love and support Michael Cohen. Strong pit bull, sex symbol, no nonsense, business oriented, and ready to make it.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask unanimous consent to make the April 20th, 2018 article in Mother Jones titled Michael Cohen Says He's Never Been to Prague. He Told Me a Different Story, part of the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, sir.
Very well. Mr. Cohen, I have some concluding remarks. But before I do that, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would. I have some closing remarks I would like to say myself. Is this an appropriate time?
You can do it now.
Thank you. So first I want to thank you, Chairman, because I appreciate the opportunity to share some final thoughts. I have acknowledged I have made my own mistakes, and I have owned up to them publicly and under oath. But silence and complicity in the face of the daily destruction of our basic norms and civility to one another will not be one of them. I did things and I acted improperly, at times at Mr. Trump's behest. I blindly followed his demands. My loyalty to Mr. Trump has cost me everything: my family's happiness, friendships, my law license, my company, my livelihood, my honor, my reputation, and soon my freedom. And I will not sit back, say nothing, and allow him to do the same to the country. Indeed, given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power. And this is why I agreed to appear before you today. In closing, I'd like to say directly to the President, we honor our veterans even in the rain. You tell the truth even when it doesn't aggrandize you. You respect the law and our incredible law enforcement agents. You don't villainize them. You don't disparage generals, Gold Star families, prisoners of war, and other heroes who had the courage to fight for this country. You don't attack the media and those who question what you don't like or what you don't want them to say. And you take responsibility for your own dirty deeds. You don't use your power of your bully pulpit to destroy the credibility of those who speak out against you. You don't separate families from one another or demonize those looking to America for a better life. You don't vilify people based on the God they pray to, and you don't cuddle up to our adversaries at the expense of our allies. And finally, you don't shut down the government before Christmas and New Year's just to simply appease your base. This behavior is churlish, it denigrates the office of the president, and it's simply un-American. And it's not you. So to those who support the president and his rhetoric, as I once did, I pray the country doesn't make the same mistakes that I have made or pay the heavy price that my family and I are paying. And I thank you very much for this additional time, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The ranking member has a closing statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We know Mr. Cohen has been dishonest in the past. That's why he's going to prison in 2 months. But there are things today that he said during the several hours of questioning that just don't add up either. He said he never defrauded any bank when he was having a conversation questioning from Mr. Comer. Obviously, that's not true because he's going to prison for that very offense. He said today he was a good lawyer who understood the need to represent his client with legal advice. But in his written testimony, he said he never bothered to consider whether payments to women were improper, much less the right thing to do. He attested in his signed truth and testimony form that he did not have any reportable contracts with foreign government entities. Earlier, he admitted to having consulting agreements with at least 2 foreign entities owned in part by foreign governments, BTA Bank of Kazakhstan and Korea Aerospace Industries of South Korea. He said to Chairman Cummings that Donald Trump directed him and the Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg to, quote, go back to his office and figure out how to make the $130,000 payment. But in his testimony, he says, Mr. Trump directed me to use my own personal funds from the home equity line of credit to avoid any money being traced back to him that could negatively impact the campaign. And in response to a question about him paying to set up the fake Twitter account at Women for Cohen, that he didn't direct the commission of that Twitter account. He says, I didn't set that up, and it was done by a young lady that works for the firm, when in fact, he did ask the IT firm Redfinch to set it up, according to the owner of Redfinch. And finally, he said he didn't want a job with the administration, even though the attorneys with the Southern District of New York stated that this was a fact. When asked about this, they said, I wouldn't call them liars, but that statement is not accurate. Mr. Chairman, I think maybe more importantly is what we should have been doing today. Mr. Meadows and I sent you a letter asking you to have Mr. Rosenstein here. I think it's important to know that last week when you announced that Mr. Cohen was coming this week, just happened to be the very same week that we learned the Deputy Attorney General of the United States was thinking about wearing a wire to record the Commander-in-Chief, was actually contemplating talking to cabinet members and invoking the 25th Amendment. That's what we should be focused on, not this sad display we've had to go through the last several hours. And again, it's not my words. You can take the words of the former General Counsel for the House of Representatives under Tip O'Neill. So I hope we've learned some things here today. But Mr. Chairman, as I said earlier, your first big hearing, the first announced witness of the 116th Congress, is a gentleman who is going to prison in 2 months for lying to Congress. I don't think that's what we should be focused on. Yield back.
Thank you very much. You know, I've sat here and I've listened to all of this, and it's very painful. It's very painful. You made a lot of mistakes, Mr. Cohen, and you've admitted that. And, you know, one of the saddest parts of this whole thing is that some very innocent people are hurting too. And you acknowledge that. And that's your family. And so you come here today and deep in my heart, you know, and when I practiced law, I represented a lot of lawyers who got in trouble. And you've come saying I had made my mistakes, but now I want to change my life. And you know, if we as a nation did not give people an opportunity after they made mistakes to change their lives, a whole lot of people would not do very well. I don't know where you go from here. As I sat here and I listened to both sides, I just felt as if, and you know, people are now using my words that they took from me, that didn't give me any credit. We're better than this. We are so much, we really are. As a country, we are so much better than this. And, you know, I told you, and for some reason, Mr. Cohen, I tell my children, I say when bad things happen to you, do not ask the question, why did it happen to me? Ask the question, why did it happen for me? I don't know why this is happening for you, but it is my hope that a small part of it is for our country to be better. If I hear you correctly, it sounds like you're crying out for a new normal, for us getting back to normal. It sounds to me like you want to make sure that our democracy stays intact. When the one meeting I had with President Trump, I said to him, the greatest gift that you and I, Mr. President, can give to our children is making sure that we give them a democracy that is intact. A democracy better than the one that we came upon. And I'm hoping that the things you said today will help us begin to get back there. You know, I mean, come on now. I mean, when you got, according to the Washington Post, our president has made at least 8,718 false or misleading statements. That's stunning. That's not what we teach our children. I don't teach mine that. And for whatever reason, it sounds like you got caught up in it. You got caught up in it. You got caught up in it. And some kind of way, I hope that you will, I know that it's painful going to prison. I know it's got to be painful being called a rat. And let me explain. A lot of people don't know the significance of that, but I live in the inner city of Baltimore. All right? And when you call somebody a rat, that's one of the worst things you can call them, because when they go to prison, that means a snitch. I'm just saying. And so the president called you a rat. We're better than that. We really are. And I'm hoping that all of us can get back to this democracy that we want and that we should be passing on our children so that they can do better than what we did. And so you wonder whether people believe you. I don't know. I don't know whether they believe you. But the fact is that you come, you have your head down, and this has got to be one of the hardest things that you could do. Let me tell you the picture that really, really pained me. You were leaving the prison, you were leaving the courthouse, and I guess it's your daughter had a braces or something on. Man, that thing hurt me. As a father of two daughters, it hurt me. And I can imagine how it must feel for you. But I'm just saying to you, I want to first of all thank you. I know that this has been hard. I know that you face a lot. I know that you are worried about your family. But this is a part of your destiny. And hopefully, this portion of your destiny will lead to a better Michael Cohen, a better Donald Trump, a better United States of America, and a better world. And I mean that from the depths of my heart. When we're dancing with the angels, the question will be asked, in 2019, what did we do to make sure we kept our democracy intact? Did we stand on the sidelines and say nothing? Did we play games? And I'm tired of these statements saying, people come in here and say, oh, this is the first hearing. It is not the first hearing. The first hearing was with regard to prescription drugs. Remember, a little girl, a lady sat there, Miss Wortham, her daughter died because she could not get $333 a month in insulin. That was our first hearing. Second hearing, H.R. 1, voting rights, corruption in government. Come on now. We can do more than one thing. And we have got to get back to normal. With that, this meeting is adjourned.